Week 15 is a wrap, so let's recap. The first two teams punched their playoff tickets, and several others were eliminated, including my boys. Major injuries took place. So let's look back on Week 15 and all its unk-still-got-it glory with our weekly vibe check, where we rank every NFL team's week. At number 32, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have been eliminated from the playoffs for the first time since 2014. Not only is this the worst season they've had in the Patrick Mahomes era, but for this season, the Mahomes era is over. Patrick Mahomes is now out for the season, meaning Jackson Mahomes will have to obnoxiously latch onto a different quarterback for fame. Mahomes tore his ACL after taking a hand to the knee in the fourth quarter. Have we seen the last of Mahomes and Kelsey on the same team? We might have. For now, Chiefs fans will have to endure stories about that long-haired yet harmless celebrity hanging out with Travis Kelsey. I am of course referring to Gardner Minshew. Minshew Mania is officially underway in Kansas City, and Patrick Mahomes will be there every step/future progressive backup commercial of the way. I can't believe the Chiefs are out, and I can't believe that Mahomes' torn ACL makes me feel a little bit more guilty about it. Chiefs fans are now going to want their team to tank for a better draft spot, but Minshew's going to be fighting for his NFL career. Uncle Rico ain't going down without a fight. At number 31, the Cincinnati Bengals. Jesus, what did we do to deserve that? The stadium was absolutely freezing, snow was still on the seats at the start of the game, which was apparently against NFL policy. Why do I always find out things are no-nos because of the Bengals? Fans were booing Joe Burrow, and despite the bad performance, that sucks. Don't yell at my boy. He's gonna come back, not give a throw for 400 yards in a win we don't need, and you're gonna get mad at him for it. Guy is an assassin. I spent the entirety of the Bengals game looking at the 0 on the scoreboard, only to realize that was the thermometer. The Bengals got shut out, my feet were freezing, and I found out that a player named Rasheen Ali exists. Bad vibes for the Bengals, who have officially been eliminated from playoff contention. The Bengals actually set the NFL record in this game for time of possession in a shutout by over 2 minutes. Everyone's gonna keep their job, including the one guy whose job it is to clean the snow off the seats for $12 an hour. Let's take a look. Oh boy, he found work quick. At number 30, the Green Bay Packers. 1 week after taking the NFC North from the Bears took it right back from them, but that is hardly the story from this game. Micah Parsons tore his ACL on the one play where an offensive lineman wasn't committing a holding penalty on him. He tried to change direction while going after Bo Nix, and he went down instantly. Now, the Packers will have to be without their star pass rusher for the rest of the season, and they have to hope he's okay going into the beginning of next season. It wasn't just him, though. Christian Watson got banged up, though he seemed to avoid serious injury to his shoulder. Elsewhere, Zach Tom and Evan Williams both suffered knee injuries, making things not even a little bit better for the Packers. Vibes are bleak in the aftermath of this game. They aren't eliminated from playoff contention by any stretch of the imagination, but this puts a major dagger in their Super Bowl hopes. At least Josh Jacobs made a cool catch. At number 29, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders might be the worst team in the NFL. Vibes are truly awful. Max Crosby got in a screaming match with Devin White. The Raiders had the second fewest total yards of offense they've ever had in a game. Pete Carroll might not last very long. Tyler Lockett suffered a wrist injury after spending all of this season knocking on retirement's door. The Kenny Pickett revenge game did not go according to plan, and I don't know how else I can say the Raiders are ass. At number 28, the New York Jets. Well, you finally made Trevor Lawrence look like the golden boy he is. And as a result, Aaron Glenn launched Steve Wilks into the sun. People have been calling for Steve Wilks' head for quite some time now, and this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The Jets didn't have a single sack on Trevor Lawrence. They allowed him to have a 136.7 passer rating. They still haven't intercepted a pass through 14 games. They allowed Travis Etienne to score every time he caught a pass, and he caught 3 passes. Brady Cook was better, but he still has a lot of room to grow. It was his second straight game with 3 interceptions. It was a decent effort, but for a team that has scored more than 48 points in this century one time, there's just no way that's happening. The tank continues, but Woody Johnson still believes in Aaron Glenn. Also, why the am I just now learning that Mason Taylor is Jason Taylor's son? At number 27, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You guys, I think the NFC South is ass, but more importantly, the Bucs are frauds. Todd Bowles had a 28-14 lead in the fourth quarter for he gave up 15 unanswered points to Kirk Cousins and Kyle Pitts, and also Bijan Robinson. An absolute abomination of a meltdown. Speaking of meltdown, Todd Bowles' post-game press conference. Can you blame him? Actually, you probably should. They let the Falcons come back from 14 down to win. A meltdown, of course, is what happens when you leave a creamsicle out in the sun too long. Okay, it was a night game, but whatever. Todd Bowles said 7 times in his press conference, I assume because they played Kyle Pitts' highlights in the background. How do you let Kyle Pitts look like the guy that everyone thought he was before the 2021 draft? Inexcusable. Atlanta played the sloppier game, but they truly wanted it more. They committed 19 penalties and still won. What the hell? With that, the Bucs now sit at 7-7 and no longer control their own destiny. It wasn't all bad though. Mike Evans returned to He-Man status with 132 receiving yards. And well, did I mention Mike Evans had 132 receiving yards? This team is not doing well after suffering 2 straight home losses against very beatable teams. And the downward trend is alarming to say the least. This team likely won't survive much longer. At number 26, the Miami Dolphins. The Chris Greer hate watch streak has come to an end. The Dolphins suffered their inevitable cold weather loss and have now been eliminated from the playoffs. Tua wasn't perfect, but he did accumulate a lot of stats in garbage time. Even with Tua throwing 2 garbage time TDs to T Painful, a lot of T words there, Mike McDaniel has now made the switch to Quinn Ewers, and he's about to have a legacy game versus the Bengals, isn't he? The defense let the Steelers dink and dunk their way down the field for the whole game, and as a result, the Dolphins can now look forward to 2026 with the most cautious optimism you've ever seen. At number 25, the Cleveland Browns. The Shador experiment continues. Shador continues to be better than Dylan Gabriel, and pretty undeniably so. But that touchdown to interception ratio is pretty glaring. Shador Sanders threw 3 interceptions, 2 on bad throws, and a 3rd interception when he decided to waste a perfect throw on Jerry Jeudy. The big playability was there, but these bad games are inevitable for a developing quarterback. Did I do good? Oh, thank you. Oh, thank God. The offense was just inefficient overall. Quinshon Judkins was limited to 17 yards from scrimmage. Shador was sacked 5 times. Harold Fannin was a target magnet, as he had 14 targets when no other Browns player had 4. At least Myles Garrett can break the single-season sack record pretty soon. Doesn't that just tickle your fancy? He deserves so much better. At number 24, the Carolina Panthers. Dude. This game was yours! The Panthers were up 17-10 against a 3-10 Saints team, then they collapsed near the end of the 4th quarter. They gave up a TD drive to the immortal Tyler Shuck, and then they had it well out of field goal range. All they had to do was not try to take Tyler Shuck's head off, and they did that anyway, didn't they? Oh yeah. That penalty put the Saints well into field goal range, and the Northern Irish legend himself kicked Carolina's hopes to be on top of the division right in the nutsack. The Panthers crashed and burned exactly when they shouldn't have, and all this makes me believe is that whoever comes out of the NFC South will be a one-and-done team in the playoffs this year. At number 23, the Arizona Cardinals. Let's see, Trey McBride explodes, defense sucks, offense produces when it's too little too late, fire the coaching staff, dumpster fire team, and lost season. Can I save this for future weeks? Sure. Thank you. God, this team sucks. Oh yeah, and they gave up 101 rushing yards to something called a Jawar Jordan. At number 22, the Detroit Lions. Every time Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford play each other, you just know they're gonna sling their dicks until their arms fall off. And that's exactly what happened. Unfortunately for the Lions, the victory went to Stafford. Amon-Ra St. Upside Brown and Jamison Williams combined for 20 catches, 298 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The rest of the Lions' offense was such a ghost town. Aiden Hutchinson had more yards on 1 INT return than Jahmyr Gibbs had yards from scrimmage. Rebound game this upcoming week against the Steelers? I most certainly think so. This certainly is a brutal blow for the Lions, though. Chicago gained a game on them in the NFC North, and their playoff hopes get slimmer and slimmer by the week. They can do it, and they've shown they are a capable team who can play with anybody. Just not great vibes for now. At number 21, the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys record fell to the level of a child heckling a wedding. 6-7, with a tie. It was a bad way to go for Dallas. Matt Eberflus, I'm pretty sure he's been called that a lot, has now been reverted to calling plays upstairs, which means it's only a matter of time before he's calling plays on Madden. The offense was good at home against the Vikings, but it wasn't enough to overcome Matt Eberflus's ability to everything up. The Cowboys have a losing record once again, and the playoffs may be out of reach. Which means who are we going to watch lose in horrific fashion in the wild card round? Oh yeah, that's right. At least CeeDee Lamb is him again. At number 20, the New England Patriots. Here's a fun piece of advice for you all. If you want to beat Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, don't accumulate 81.25% of your second half yardage on one play. Sure, that Travion run was badass, and that Drake May block allowed it to continue, but that's all the Patriots were able to do in the second half. Their other drives were a punt, a pick, punt, and a turnover on downs. That's not going to enable you to beat Josh Allen, whose hog doubles in size when the fourth quarter comes about. Drake May did severe damage to his MVP case by having 2 rushing touchdowns. You're not supposed to trick the voters into thinking you don't play quarterback. That's not a good move. Vibes aren't great for the Patriots, though they still have a 1-game lead on the Bills in the AFC East. They're almost certainly making the playoffs, and they could even overtake the Broncos for the number 1 seed if Bo Nix comes back to earth. At number 19, the New York Giants. Our next 2 teams have nothing to play for except coming at the top of the tankathon. The Giants want to build confidence for 2026, and ever since they bludgeoned the Eagles on Thursday Night Football, they have lost 8 straight. This team has really struggled to win. Darius Slayton dropped a touchdown, and Younghoe Koo has still completely forgotten how to kick, though at least he'd make contact with the ball this time. Jackson Dart had a pedestrian game, though he has shown himself to be effective as a franchise quarterback even without Malik Neighbors. 16 targets per game for 17 yards, aficionado Wan'Dale Robinson had a touchdown, and Tyrone Tracy found pay dirt twice. However, none of the offensive success enabled them to overcome the Washington Commanders. Marcus Mariota might earn himself a starting job soon. Where do I think he'll be? Tune into my video this next weekend to find out. Love to see ya. At number 18, the Tennessee Titans. This team is improving ever so slowly. They haven't given up, and Titans fans are looking for hope in a lost season. So I'm gonna praise y'all. Cam Ward doesn't look like absolute piss. Jeffrey Simmons is the most underrated player in the NFL, argue with a wall about it, and him catching a touchdown while actually running a route was so fun to watch. Gunnar Helm might be the Chigoziem to Euro Okonkwo. Tony Pollard has sneakily been really good of late. The offensive line didn't allow a single sack. There are pieces there. Just get a coaching staff and some receiver help for Cam Ward. I don't want to read the sentence, Van Jefferson is the best receiver on this team ever again. At number 17, the Indianapolis Colts. The fact that this game was as close as it was made Phillip Rivers the underdog for the week. Phillip Rivers wasn't great, but I didn't have any Phillip Rivers expectations except for fans to shout, "It should have been this guy!" Shut up. It was fun to watch Phillip Rivers try to sling it, and he slinged a touchdown. Phillip Rivers threw a touchdown to Josh Downs in honor of how low his arm angle was every time he threw. The Colts season is pretty much lost at this point. They just need to have fun while they can with Phillip Rivers. They don't have a first-round pick next year, which means they're either going to have to keep Daniel Jones while he recovers from a shredded Achilles, or they just might have to get a big gun from the free agent market. It's a weird class of big guns, as most of them have been run out of their towns. It'll be fun to watch, and the Colts will be at the center of that. Before I go any further, if you like what you've seen so far, subscribe to the channel. I do all kinds of comedic shorts a few times a week. I post these long form videos every week, and I want to do a second long form every week. I gotta get them rolling. That's on me. Also, you can check my website, alexschubertcomedy.com, for upcoming shows and stand-up dates. But for now, back to the video. At number 16, the Minnesota Vikings. 9 is so back. JJ McCarthy took time away from being mid as hell to actually have a good game against the Cowboys. JJ McCarthy ran into the end zone the same way I attended my high school homecoming. He danced all by himself. Also, CJ Ham scored his inevitable 1 touchdown sponsored by the Make-A-Wish Foundation of the year, so good for him. The Vikings offense was all too familiar with Matt Eberflus from his Bears days, so they knew the most effective way to beat Matt Eberflus was to do literally anything at all. This was a good win by the Vikings, though the major caveats are that the Vikings are now officially eliminated from the playoffs and Christian Darrisaw is on IR, so mediocre vibes. At number 15, The Washington Commanders. Teams are starting to shut down their quarterbacks for the year. Tua Tagovailoa, not Joe Burrow for some reason. And now, Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has been shut down for the rest of the year, meaning it's Marcus Mariota's job to avoid major injury on the shitty playing surface at FedEx Field before he can get a new contract. Mariota has been serviceable in relief of Jaden Daniels, as he was able to lead an offense that had good performances from Bill Krosky-Merritt and Terry McLaurin, who had 60 nice yards and a touchdown. This win does absolutely nothing for the Commanders except snap an 8-game skid and provide Dan Quinn's team with a moral victory. They have now swept the Giants on the year, though the Giants are the only NFC team the Commanders have beaten all season. Enjoy the dub for now. At number 14, the LA Rams. Hey, for once the Detroit Lions helped Matthew Stafford improve his MVP case. Though he gave a gimme interception to Aiden Hutchinson, Stafford was really effective for the rest of the game. He threw 2 touchdowns to Colby Parkinson, only one of which should have counted. One of Stafford's throws got Tom Brady to say piss missile on national TV, so that was fun for everyone involved. Unfortunately for Davante Adams though, his hamstring came up a bit rough on a fourth quarter play, and he is out for this upcoming week against Seattle. This was an offensive firestorm against a resilient Lions team, though the Davante Adams injury was bad news for everyone except Puka Nacua fantasy owners. At number 13, the Seattle Seahawks. Jason Myers is an absolute god. He was 6 for 6 on field goals. JSN was pretty good, but to not score a touchdown against a subpar pass defense that was already missing Sauce Gardner, and a team whose offense had a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and the statistical best receiver in the NFL this season? Oof. At least you won though. It was well managed by the coaching staff, though they need to step up their game for the stretch run. At number 12, the New Orleans Saints. This is kind of how you walk ass backwards into a victory. And if you're the Saints, you take it. You've played spoiler to your division rivals 2 weeks in a row, and Tyler Shuck is really starting to come into his own. They were down 17-10 going into the fourth quarter, and then they scored on 2 consecutive drives to win. Once was a touchdown to Chris Olave, and the other one was a game-winning field goal by Charlie Smith. Smith, who knows? The Saints are only going for moral victories and spoiler victories at this point, and who can blame them? Kellen Moore really needs to find these moral victories through the rest of the season so he can gain confidence for year 2. Also, is Chase Young good? He might be. At number 11, the Atlanta Falcons. So that happened. I know the Falcons aren't really playing for much besides getting a top draft pick for the Rams, but Raheem Morris is still kind of fighting for his job. This was a Falcons team that had 19 penalties in this game against Tampa, which was the most a team has had in a win since 2016, which was accomplished by the Raiders. What do that Raiders game in 2016 and last week's Falcons have in common? For both of those games, they beat Tampa in Tampa. How were they able to do it? Kirk Cousins' everlasting hatred for the Buccaneers. They came back from 28-14 down, scored 15 unanswered, and had a game-winning field goal by Zane Gonzalez as time expired. Even without Drake London, Kirk Cousins was able to lean on his stars. Bijan Robinson had 8 catches for 82 yards. But more importantly, the world as we knew it came crashing down. Falcons, we need to talk. Will the real Kyle Pitts please stand up? Kyle Pitts, the most enigmatic player in the history of the world, absolutely tore up the Bucs for 11 receptions, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I am reading that correctly. Those are all career highs for him. He had as many touchdowns in this game alone as he had in the entire first 2 seasons of his career. But if you commit 19 penalties and win, the major takeaway should be Tampa Bay lost to a team that committed 19 penalties. Raheem Morris was on cloud 9, on camera kissing Andrew Whitworth, living his best life. Guy treats 5 and 9 like the ecstasy pill just kicked in. For the Falcons though, they're trying to have fun the rest of the season. They have almost nothing to play for. Also, decide who you want Kyle Pitts to be. Can he succeed with Drake London in the lineup, or is this just a one-off performance? Finally, Kyle Pitts. At number 10, the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, Brock Purdy had a damn good time in this game. He had one of the better games of his season as he had 3 touchdowns and no picks. 2 of his TDs were to Jawan Jennings, and the other one was to George Kittle. Ricky Pearsall was the leading receiver as he had 6 receptions for 92 yards. And there really were times where the Titans defense was about as present in Levi's Stadium as Brandon Ayuk. Though it's not a good look to give up 24 points to the Titans offense, 6 of which came from Jeffrey Simmons. The 49ers are now 10-4, including 4-1 in division games, and somehow in 3rd place in the division. They're almost guaranteed a playoff spot as long as this team doesn't get skull stalked by the injury bug again. They're a legitimately good team, despite all the injuries they've dealt with. At number 9, the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are one step closer to the playoffs, and they took out both the captain and the ship. It was a strong week for the Chargers, who are once again a strong team, despite losing both sides of their offensive line. Justin Herbert did just enough to win. The defensive line had 5 sacks on Patrick Mahomes and limited the Chiefs to 49 rushing yards. The sweep and elimination of the Chiefs are both 100% complete. Deion Henley had the game-sealing interception that ended the Chiefs' season. Now, Chiefs fans are griping that playoff viewership will go down because hundreds of millions of fans were chomping at the bit to watch Gardner Minshew. Thank you, Chargers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're free. Good work. Now get Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater back healthy, please. I think Justin Herbert's wrist would co-sign that message. At number 8, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one was a dominant win. Minkah Fitzpatrick did not have the revenge game he wanted. They were truly efficient with the ball on offense. They had 2 rushing touchdowns from tight ends because Arthur Smith, with the cold temperatures, Rodgers did everything he needed to do. He only had 4 incompletions, he utilized his tight ends so Arthur Smith doesn't egg his house, and he threw touchdowns to DK Metcalf and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. The defense had an up and down week. TJ Watt missed this game due to a collapsed lung, which is strange because the Steelers don't collapse until the wild card round of the playoffs. Then they stifled Tua until garbage time when he went nuclear too little too late. Vibes are pretty good in Pittsburgh. They're 8-6 and riding a 2-game winning streak. Do they finish 9-8 or 11-7? We will soon find out. At number 7, the Denver Broncos. Do we believe? Yes, we do. The Broncos became the second team to clinch a playoff spot this year, as they clinched it merely minutes after the Rams did in their victory over the Lions. Bosef Nixon and company had one of the better and more efficient games they've had of late, and now they've won 10 in a row. Bosef Nixon threw 4 tutties, and 5 different Broncos players scored. Even Michael Bandy got in on the fun. Granted, not having to face Micah Parsons for any bit of time makes it more likely that you're going to beat the Packers, but I digress. This Broncos team is riding high, and they can clinch the division next week with a win and a Chargers loss. They are 12-2, though are they doing all of their winning too early? Who knows? We've seen things like this before, but enjoy it for now. At number 6, the Baltimore Ravens. Well, good for you. The Ravens endured freezing temperatures, Lamar Jackson only needing to throw 12 passes, 8 of which were completed, and Jamar Chase having 132 receiving yards. The Ravens defense was so dominant against the Bengals, Alohi Gilman had a pick 6 on an interception that he didn't even catch. The Ravens had a good afternoon, and they now stand at 7-7 and 1 game behind the Steelers for the AFC North lead. The AFC North is clearly one of the worst divisions in the NFL right now, and the Ravens could rise to the top of it. They certainly performed well on Sunday, and they now ended the Bengals season. I have nothing to say anymore. I don't even want to talk. My feet are still numb. At number 5, the Houston Texans. The ascent continues. They've won 6 in a row and 9 out of their last 11. And granted, this win was against a team that didn't stand a chance against them. The Texans offense had 399 total yards. Jawar Jordan came out of absolutely nowhere in the wake of the Dick Bruce's injury to get 101 rushing yards. Nico Collins scored twice, Dalton Schultz scored once, and Kaimi Fairbairn's leg was about as busy as the guy who has to write excuses for Jonathan Gannon. Houston is full of good energy right now. Their defense continues to be one of the most elite ones we've seen in quite some time. The Texans defense held Trey McBride to 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's like pitching a 1-run complete game. At number 4, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles were in a must-win situation to help continue to fend off the Dallas Cowboys. And what do? They made the Raiders look like absolute shit. It was such a dominant win, they brought in Tanner McKee at the end of the game, and he had more net passing yards on 3 attempts than Kenny Pickett had in the entire game. There really isn't too much to say, except I just know Eagles fans are going to act like they just beat the '85 Bears. Which, speaking of 1985, the last time the Raiders won a playoff game, that's when their leading receiver from that game was drafted. Jerry Rice, thank you for asking. Any must-win game where you bench your quarterback for a good reason is automatic good vibes, except, oh no. At number 3, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills quickly suffered from a 21-0 deficit for Drake May reasons, but then they came storming back because Josh Allen is trying to win for 3 now. James Cook was the skill position star of the show for the Bills because the rest of their skill position players are tremendous heaps of mid. James Cook had 3 touchdowns, 2 on the ground and 1 through the air, and Dawson Longlocks Knox even caught a touchdown. The Bills offense never let their foot off the gas. as after their first drive of the second quarter, they scored a touchdown on every single one of their drives but one. Now, Jordan Phillips did get hurt in this game, but he did talk shit to Patriots fans after the game by telling them, and I quote, to suck a fat dick. Only issue I have is that he didn't say that to Steelers fans, but there's still time. Bills Mafia has to be on cloud 9 after avenging their early season loss to the Patriots at home. At number 2, the Chicago Bears. You have to be elated if you're a Bears fan. The Bears steamrolled the Cleveland Browns worse than Deshaun Watson's contract. And the Packers lost, putting the Bears right back in first place in the NFC North. Caleb Williams did a great job at spreading the ball around to Luther Burden, who had 6 catches for 84 yards, and DJ Moore, who found the end zone twice. DeAndre Swift also found the end zone twice. Good work, buddy. Both sides of the ball for the Bears were massively effective, and the Bears barely broke a sweat. They sacked Shedeur 5 times, picked him off 3 times, and held Quinshon Judkins to 17 yards from scrimmage. Elsewhere, the Bears-Browns game was invaded by several pigeons, all of whom have better hands than Jerry Jeudy. So that was fun. But at number 1, the Jacksonville Jaguars. One of the biggest morale boosters a locker room can have is the fact that they played so well an opposing coach got fired. That's exactly what Trevor Lawrence and his long locks just did. Trevor Lawrence had the best game of his career with 330 passing yards in his first ever game with 5 passing touchdowns. He also accounted for 51 rushing yards and a rushing TD, because adding insult to injury is always so much fun. They did let Brady Cook improve after his first start, as the Jags defense gave up a TD to 80, as well as one on the ground to Isaiah Davis. I mean, it's not great, but it's certainly not anything to fire a defensive coordinator over. The Jags have now won 5 in a row and 6 out of their last 7. They even just extended Jacoby Myers for 3 years before the season was even over. They can clinch this weekend. Vibes couldn't be better. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, click the like button and subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get notifications about when I upload a video. And stay tuned for more sports content that you didn't ask for.